All right, so you ready to dive in? We've got a ton of listener-submitted articles all about South Korea's coffee scene. And let me tell you, things are getting a little intense over there.
Oh, yeah, definitely intense. It's
Yeah.
fascinating how,
I mean, think about it. Your daily coffee has been getting more and more expensive, right? Well, in South Korea, Starbucks just hiked up their Americano price by almost 15%.
whoa,
Like in just a couple of years. And it's not just Starbucks either. Even the more affordable places, they're raising prices too.
it's kind of crazy, right?
Yeah.
What I think is really interesting, though, is that this isn't just like normal inflation, just coffee prices going up everywhere. It's like South Korea's coffee market, it's like deeply tied to how their whole economy works.
I'm curious, what's the connection there?
Well, okay, get this. South Korea has a self-employment rate of almost 25%.
25%? Wow, is that like normal?
That's way higher than most developed countries.
Huh, why is that? Like, is it by choice? Or is it more like out of necessity?
It's complicated, but a lot of times it comes down to jobs. Like there aren't enough traditional jobs, especially for, older workers.
Okay, so they turn to self-employment.
Yeah, exactly. And guess what? A huge chunk of those self-employed people are running.
Let me see. Bakeries. No, wait.
Coffee shop.
Coffee shops. Of course, it's everywhere.
They're everywhere. Seriously, you'll find like almost twice as many coffee shops in South Korea as convenience stores.
Whoa. So that means there's a ton of competition.
Oh, yeah, tons. And that makes them super vulnerable to rising costs. And right now, they're getting hit from all sides. Coffee bean prices are up, rent is sky high, labor costs are climbing. It's tough.
So it's like this perfect storm just hitting all these small business owners.
Mm-hmm.
But why are the coffee bean prices themselves going up so much? I mean, it can't just be local stuff happening in Korea, right?
You're totally right. There are some massive global things at play. For one, global coffee consumption, like worldwide, it's surged by about 20% recently.
Wow.
But production, it's not keeping up. It's only increased by like 5 to 10%.
So it's basic supply and demand on a global scale.
Exactly. Everyone wants their caffeine fix,
Mm-hmm.
but the world's struggling to, brew enough.
Makes sense. I've heard that a lot of that demand is coming from China.
Yeah. Younger generations there, they're switching from tea to coffee in huge numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And that's adding like millions of new coffee drinkers to the global market.
But I gotta push back a bit here. Is it fair to just point the finger at China? I mean, there must be other stuff going on that's limiting the supply, right?
Oh, for sure. You're totally right to challenge that. There's the whole climate change thing. The Arabica bean, the good stuff. It's really sensitive to temperature. And, well, the planet's getting hotter.
Yeah.
And that means major coffee producers like Ethiopia and Colombia, they're having a harder time growing it, which, of course, directly impacts how much coffee is out there.
So more demand, less supply, prices go up. Simple.
Basically. But wait, there's more.
Oh, no. What else?
We got to talk about speculative investments. It's like imagine the stock market, but for coffee beans.
Coffee bean stock market. Okay.
So investors, they buy and sell these things called coffee futures. They're basically betting on what the price of coffee will be in the future. And all that buying and selling, it can artificially inflate the prices like even before the actual amount of coffee changes.
Okay, hold on. So we've got increased demand from China, climate change messing with production, and then investors playing coffee bean roulette, all pushing prices up. So how is all this craziness specifically impacting South Korea's coffee scene?
Well, South Korea imports most of its coffee beans.
Mm-hmm.
So those global price hikes, they hit them hard. And those mom and pop coffee shops, remember, they're already facing crazy competition. Now they're in a real bind. They have to raise prices just to keep the lights on.
It's like this ripple effect from all over the world is crashing onto South Korea's coffee culture. But you mentioned earlier how the coffee market is like super connected to South Korea's economy. Can you explain that a little more?
For sure. Remember that self-employment rate we talked about? That
Yeah.
25%? A lot of people turn to self-employment because there just aren't enough other jobs, especially like after they retire.
Okay.
So you've got this huge group of folks, often without much of a safety net, running these tiny businesses in this super competitive market.
And then you add in all these global forces driving up their costs.
Exactly. It's a recipe for like a really vulnerable situation.
Wow, I'm starting to see the bigger picture here. It's not just about the price of a latte, it's about people's livelihoods and the health of like a huge part of South Korea's workforce. But before we go too deep into that, you also mentioned something about a link between South Korea's work culture and all the coffee they drink.
Oh, right. This is where it gets really interesting. So South Korea, they have this incredibly intense work culture. Long hours, tight deadlines. You know the drill.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
And some experts actually think that this work culture is part of why they drink so much coffee. Think about it. If people were less stressed, had more downtime, would they really need 4 cups of coffee just to get through the day?
It's like coffee is a band-aid for a bigger problem.
Yeah, like a crutch to help them handle this demanding work culture.
And you're saying that this, like, feeds into how vulnerable the coffee market is?
Exactly. It's a vicious cycle. High stress, more coffee, more demand, more problems for coffee shops when prices go up.
Wow, things are really brewing now. We've got global economics, climate change, work culture,
Ah.
all swirling around in this coffee cup. It's a lot to take in, but I'm definitely hooked. Okay, so we've got this, like, tangled web of problems hitting South Korea's coffee scene. Global stuff, local stuff, it's a lot. But is there anything that can actually be done about it? Like, are there any solutions out there that could help fix this whole coffee crisis?
Yeah, actually, there are some pretty interesting ideas being tossed around, both globally and within South Korea itself.
Okay, let's start with the global stuff. What's happening on that front?
Well, one big focus is on helping out the coffee farmers, like supporting them and making sure they're farming in a sustainable way.
That makes sense. Got to start at the source, right?
Exactly. There are these initiatives to help farmers adapt to climate change, so they can grow more coffee and also get paid fairly for their beans.
So it's about empowering them, basically. But what about those investors, the ones playing the coffee bean stock market? Anything being done about that?
Totally. More and more people are saying that market needs more transparency and regulation.
I can see why. It sounds kind of chaotic.
Yeah, it can be. The goal is to prevent too much speculation. That's what drives up the prices artificially and makes the whole market unstable.
Sounds like a tough battle, trying to control the coffee bean stock market. But okay, what about solutions within South Korea itself? What can they do to help out their coffee shops and the people who love their coffee?
Well, government support for small businesses would be huge.
Like what kind of support?
Oh, lots of things. Financial aid, tax breaks, even programs to help coffee shops get better rent deals. And find cheaper supplies, too.
So it's about giving those independent shops a fighting chance in this crazy market.
Exactly.
But what about the people actually buying the coffee? Any solutions for them so their daily caffeine fix doesn't break the bank?
There's a big push for what they call conscious coffee consumption.
What's that?
It's basically encouraging people to be more aware of their coffee.
Aware.
Yeah, like where it comes from, how it's grown, all that.
Yeah.
And to think about how their choices affect, the environment and the lives of the farmers.
So like buying fair trade coffee or supporting those local roasters.
Exactly. But you're right, those options can be pricier, and affordability is a big deal right now. So there are other solutions popping up, too.
Like what?
Have you heard of coffee sharing platforms?
Coffee sharing. That's a new one.
It's pretty cool. It's like a matchmaking service for coffee lovers and cafes. So these platforms, they connect people with cafes that have unsold coffee at the end of the day.
Leftover coffee.
Yeah, and they sell it at a discount.
Yeah.
So the cafes reduce waste and people get cheaper coffee.
That's awesome. It's like a win-win for everyone. But okay, what about that other elephant in the room, the one we talked about earlier? South Korea's intense work culture and how it's connected to all the coffee they drink. Any ideas on how to tackle that beast?
Now, that's a big one. But some experts think that if people had a better work-life balance, more time for themselves, less stress, they might not need all that caffeine to get through the day.
That's a nice thought. But how do you actually change an entire country's work culture?
It's definitely a long-term goal, for sure. It needs, system-wide change. But there are some good signs. Some companies are already starting to limit overtime work and encouraging their employees to actually use their vacation time.
It's a start. But it sounds like there's no quick fix for any of this. It's also complicated, and it needs, a multi-pronged approach.
You got it. Addressing South Korea's coffee problem means looking at everything, the global factors and the local ones, supporting businesses, and also helping consumers make good choices.
So we've got helping coffee farmers, regulating those crazy investors, government support for small businesses, promoting conscious consumption, and even rethinking work-life balance. That's a pretty long list. But out of all those, is there any one solution that you think is the most promising or the most impactful?
What's really interesting to me? It's how connected all those solutions are. It's not about finding one magic bullet. It's realizing that coffee prices, climate change, work culture, even how people shop, it's all intertwined. To really fix things, we need to think about the whole system.
I like that. It's a reminder that even small things can make a difference, like choosing fair trade coffee or speaking up for better work-life balance. They all add up.
Absolutely. And that awareness, that understanding of how everything's connected, it's crucial for building a better future for everyone involved in the coffee industry, from the farmers to the people who drink it.
Well said. So we've covered a lot of ground here. The global coffee crisis, possible solutions, even the deeper meaning of our coffee choices. But before we wrap up, I think it's time to zoom out even further and think about the bigger picture. What does this whole coffee conundrum tell us about the world we live in? What are the real lessons we can brew from all this?
Yeah, it's kind of wild, right? How, like, something as every day as a cup of coffee can tell us so much about how the world works.
Totally. This whole deep dive has been a whirlwind. Global economics, climate change, work culture, even psychology, and it's all connected.
I know, right? So before we wrap things up, I'm curious, for you, what are the biggest takeaways from this whole coffee thing? Like, what are the real lessons we can brew from all this?
For me, the most surprising thing is how interconnected everything really is. Like that latte you buy in Seoul, the price is affected by things happening on the other side of the world, climate change in Ethiopia, what people are drinking in China, even financial speculation. It's all tangled up together. Yeah, it's like a domino effect almost. You nudge one thing and it sets off this chain reaction across the globe.
Exactly, and I think that shows how important it is to understand those global systems and to realize that the choices we make, whether it's as consumers, businesses, or even like policymakers, they have these ripple effects that go way beyond our own little bubble.
So it's not just about enjoying your coffee, it's also about being aware of the impact of that choice on the whole world around you.
For sure. And that brings us to another important point, the power of individual and collective action. Whether it's buying fair trade coffee, supporting sustainable farming, or speaking up for better working conditions for farmers, even small things can make a difference.
It's like think globally, act locally, but for coffee.
Exactly. And that leads to what I find most hopeful about all this, the potential for innovation and creative solutions. Like, remember those coffee sharing platforms? Such a cool idea. They tackle food waste and make coffee more affordable. It shows that even with all these complicated problems, there's always room for fresh thinking and new approaches.
I love those platforms. They're a great example of how a simple idea can have a real impact. And it shows how important collaboration is, bringing together businesses, governments, researchers, even regular coffee drinkers, all working together to come up with solutions that work for everyone.
Couldn't agree more. This whole coffee conundrum is like a mini version of the bigger challenges facing the world. But it also reminds us that we have this incredible potential for positive change. If we work together, embrace new ideas, and stay committed to building a more sustainable and fair future.
I love that. It's a good reminder that even something as simple as a cup of coffee can spark these important conversations and inspire us to make a difference.
Well said. And I think that's a great note to end on. The world of coffee and the world in general, it's always changing. But if we stay curious, informed, and engaged, we can all contribute to a tastier and more sustainable future for everyone.
That's a beautiful thought. So, to all our amazing listeners out there, we raise our ethically sourced mugs to you. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into South Korea's coffee conundrum. Until next time, stay caffeinated and keep exploring the world with curiosity and open minds.